What has been the impact on your family of breaking rules? When you don't have personal boundaries as a leader and you break your own rules, it doesn't just impact the business. It impacts everybody that's involved in your life. And that, to me, probably, has the greatest impact, because if you can lead well at work, it really makes you a better leader at home. And if you can set those boundaries at work and have clarity there, and you do that at home, it just helps on both sides.
Lloyd Brown, welcome to the ROI Online Podcast.
Amazing, right?
Thank you, Steve. Exciting to be here because I've been watching you do this almost from day one.
Yeah, so I'm kind of getting good at it. You'd hope that after 100 and something episodes, you'd get the hang of things.
What they say is repetition makes you unconsciously confident, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm proud to have you, Lloyd. You're you've been a client, you're a friend, you're a confidant, and now you're an author. And today we're going to talk about your book, Refined by Failure: Breaking Rules and Getting Burned. This is a cautionary tale of a CEO who grew a big company, had a set of rules in place to set him up for success. But you need to read the book to learn what comes out of that. So here's the problem, Lloyd. You set rules to keep you out of trouble, but what happens if you break your own rules? The problem is that most people don't know how to handle failure. They think they do until it happens, and then their confidence crumbles and they feel like a complete failure themselves. But what's cool is this book helps you learn from your mistakes, and that you're not defined by your failures, you're refined by these failures. And so, Lloyd, tell us a little bit about your professional journey, and then what in the world caused you to write a book outlining all your failures?
There's a lot of there, Steve. So, I grew up with a dad that was a serial entrepreneur and owned his own company. And at an early age, started teaching me about business, starting with running vending machines at his business and being responsible to fill them up, and both a Coke machine and a candy machine, and then getting into lawn mowing business, and then going through that part of life and getting that preparation. And unfortunately, my dad died when I was 20 years old, and so then I'm kickstarted into life at hyperspeed while I'm in college. And I get out and I work for a company that he founded for a number of years, and then went to run a large family operated construction business, and was a miserable failure at that business, and learned a lot of things about of what I didn't want to do if I ever had the opportunity to lead my own company. And lo and behold, I ended up starting co-founding a company with two other partners that really took off and did something very special in an 11-year time frame.
Yeah. So this company you built, I got to witness it. And as you were my client during this time, and we became friends, but I got to witness you excel in a rough and tumble industry, the oil and gas services industry. And you did you fought a good fight for a long time and experienced a lot of success.
Absolutely. And near-death experiences, and all the things that you do when you're an entrepreneur, and when you're leading a business, and you go through dynamic growth cycles, and then you're in an industry that in and of itself is very volatile. There's peaks and valleys, and the peaks happen fast and the valleys seem to happen even faster. And so there's a lot to be learned in that process. And the reason there's a lot to be learned is you end up failing a lot. You you make a lot of decisions that don't work out, and most of the time you're able to recover from those. But this last major event in 2020 was one of those that I personally, as a leader, couldn't recover from.
Yeah. I'm one of the things I admired and I recognized when I met you and started seeing you in your company. You had a small company, I think about 25 employees or something, and you grew it to over 200. But I always felt that you had identified these 10 rules. And I thought, I really recognized how it was smart and how it actually led your culture, and it helped you achieve a certain amount of success by building a team, by sitting down and coming up with these rules. Where did that come from?
I was a member of a Vistage group in Fort Worth, and we had a speaker, and I really wish I could remember his name. I need to go back and research that. But he was talking about how do you help people in your organization make decisions as if you were there, but you're not. And he said, one of the really important things is to create a culture that everybody understands the boundaries, everybody understands the guidelines for them to go make decisions. And he really talked about how that establishes trust within the organization. And to me, it resonated that it's like building a super highway, right? You have boundaries on each side, but when you're within those boundaries, you can go really fast. And that was the intention behind it. And really identify what the expectations are for how you treat each other as well. So that's what we did. The management team, which most of us were shareholders in the company, we came together and we agreed on the 10 rules over a few months, and then implemented them. And they really ended up defining my life. And so much so that, those rules are really the foundation of writing this book.
Yeah. So then, when I think about those rules, most businesses don't get around to maybe doing that. Imagine most small businesses, they just get an idea and they kind of try to figure out if it's going to stick or not. And then they wake up maybe a couple of 2 or 3 years later, and then they start to investigate, how do I impact my culture? How do I solve this problem of my employees? They seem to be kind of out of control or not understanding what I'm wanting to achieve. And I think it's a real key to success, that if you can do this in the beginning, it's a big lever.
No, I agree with you. Absolutely. It really goes back to, how do you establish a relationship that you trust each other? And those rules or guidelines, whatever you want to call them within the individual organization, they're meant to just give clarity, right? They're meant so when somebody goes, hey, I've got a choice A, I got a choice B, you can weigh those against really those scales within your organization for your culture and make a really good decision. And, we only had one rule that if you intentionally broke it, you were terminated. And that was our safety rule. With everything else, we wanted to give grace, because from failing, you learn. And I'm finding out that I'm going to have a PhD by the end of my life on learning from my failures.
So let's establish, when you sit down and you start to go, so not everybody's going to want to do the same 10 rules that you do, but those rules that you do decide, they're coming from a place of your why.
Absolutely.
So tell us about your why and why these 10 specific rules, and we'll quickly let you list those out, but let's start with your why. Where did these come from? And they impacted your 10 rules, or the why did.
I wanted to have a business to where we treated our customers and our employees with mutual respect and trust. And in the oil and gas industry, and my business was in the chemical side, historically has been known as a lot of snake oil salesmen.
Mhm.
And employees also had been treated somewhat as a commodity and where they could come and go. Everybody's replaceable. And the companies that think like that, that just never resonated with me. And it's a reason why I started the business, was to be able to make those decisions to help shape it and really, treat people with trust, number one, and respect, number two. And in that way, assuming that our products and services were the same, people choose to do business and to work in our organization because of those values.
So when we first started working together, the default expectation of an internet marketing company is that I need more business, I need more leads. But that wasn't what you needed. You had plenty of business. You didn't have enough employees to take care of your business, and you couldn't scale because of that. And yet you're having to compete for these employees with big companies that had more of a weaponized way of recruiting.
Yeah, I've never thought of it, as a weaponized way, but yeah, they really knew how to go find talent, retain talent, and then they'd eject everybody else.
Mhm.
And if you had somebody really talented, boy, they were going to come after them. So you had to give people a reason to work for you. I think, there's a lot to the statement, treat people and train them so they can leave, but treat them so well that they don't. And, Sir Richard Branson, he's the one, I've misquoted him a little bit there, but, he really impressed me when he said that, because you're trusting people that they're going to stay when you treat them well.
Mhm.
And if you train them, they're going to be able to grow into your organization and continue to propel that organization forward. You got to have them both. And you just have to trust that doing the right thing is going to provide the right results.
Yeah, so I think your rules were your competitive advantage when the employees were evaluating whether they wanted to work for company A or your company. And I think you were pinging something that was really important to them. Where am I valued? Where's my life going to fit and be congruent with my family life?
And the funny thing is, a lot of folks talked about it being a family atmosphere. And in reflection, I don't know I know what they mean by it.
Mhm.
My experience and my family and other families, most of us are pretty dysfunctional, and you
Yeah.
don't want to have a organization that's way, but when you have the best of a feeling of a family, that's a high compliment. And we had that compliment a lot within our organization.
So tell us about your 10 rules.
So the 10 rules are: rule number one, I'm going to go back to the old 10 rules.
Okay.
Rule number one was a safety rule, because if you don't go home at night, nothing else matters.
Mhm.
Rule number two is the golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated. Rule number three is the give trust, earn trust rule. Rule number four is the have fun rule. You spend more time at work than you should anywhere else. You might as well have fun. Rule number five was the vigorous debate rule. Vigorous debate is encouraged while not violating rule number two. Rule number six, the best rule: we expect while you're at work that you're going to give your best every day. Rule number seven, the Zig rule, named after Zig Ziglar: help others get what they want, and eventually you'll get what you want. Rule number eight is the commitment rule. Try is not a commitment. Say yes or no so we can know which way we need to go forward. Rule number nine is the celebrate rule. Celebrate business and personal victories. And rule number 10 is the learning rule, which happens to be chapter number one of my book.
So here we are. Let's kind of set the stage on why you wrote this book, right? So
Mhm. Right.
one of your stories in that really impacted me was, here you had fought this long fight. You had made a successful sale and had kind of settled in and you were going to version 2 of the company. You were getting ready to scale even bigger. And you had a reason to celebrate, and you were at a car dealership and you were picking up this dream car, and you get a phone call. Tell us about that story.
So we had sold the business in December of 2018, and the original founding partners and investors were bought out, and a new group of investors, private equity investors, were brought in, and the management team, including myself, we all reinvested. And so after that, 2019 was somewhat of a turbulent year for the company. And then going into 2020, it was March 27th of 2020, and got a phone call from the chairman of the board of the company, and he asked me if I had a minute. And it's funny, I was sitting in a car dealership, waiting in the finance to sign the check and leave for a new 2020 Corvette. So it was really a time I was internally struggling. The business was crashing around us, oil and gas. We were on our way to a negative, $40 a barrel for oil. It was just a catastrophic time, and I'm everybody's remembering, I'm sure, how that felt in 2020. And he called and he said, "Hey, we're looking at how we can help the business survive, and we think that we need to lighten the company, and we're heavy in leadership, and we'd like for you to step down."
It's like, wow, this was a company you started.
Yes.
How did you feel in that moment?
Well, in that exact moment, I was panicked, mind racing a million miles an hour. I have an employment agreement as part of the purchase and choosing to stay to lead the company. And so I'm thinking about, I've got this agreement, I've got all of these things running through my mind, and most prevalent is how am I going to have a conversation with my wife?
Wow.
It's just a wave of emotions, and then you go into the faking it mode as a guy comes in and says, "Hey, we're ready to close the deal." Wow.
You think about what that drive home was supposed to feel like in your new car, and I can just imagine that was the farthest thing from your mind as you were driving.
Oh yeah, I remember the whole drive, every aspect of the drive, and none of it was on how cool or awesome that car was. It was completely irrelevant at that time.
So fast forward, you decide, I'm going to write a book, and most people go, here's the road to success, and this is how you get there, and I can teach you. But what does Lloyd Brown do? He writes a book and outlines all his rules, and then shows you where he broke them. What am I supposed to get out of this book?
I think the number one thing that, if I could have an impact, is that there's no shame in failure.
Mm.
That failure does not define you unless you let it. And our society's really good about piling on, and even your worst enemy is your own mind. And when you had encouraged me so many times to write a book about the 10 rules and the culture, as I started to write that, it really became evident to me that I needed to write not about our success, but the failure, because we learned so much more from that. And it really became a personal journey that, man, it was the most awesome, blessed, hard journey I've ever taken.
Yeah, when I encouraged you to write this book, I was thinking of all the things that you could help someone that was being acquired, or someone that was bringing in a investment team, or whatever, all the traps that they were about to encounter, and how you could help them navigate it. But what you came out with was totally different.
What's funny? I think I did outline the traps
From
because
the
I stepped in all of them. I don't know if I stepped in all of them, but I stepped in a lot of traps. Most of them were set by me and I forgot they were there and stepped right in them. But yeah, maybe we accomplished that anyway.
We're listening to Lloyd Brown, or you're watching Lloyd Brown on the ROI Online Podcast. We're talking about his book that just released yesterday, and 3 categories. Number 1 bestseller, Refined by Failure, Breaking Rules and Getting Burned. So Lloyd, I hear these questions often. People come to us and they're wanting this investment to help them grow the value of their business, but oftentimes we work on their messaging and it impacts their leadership. So I wanted to ask you several questions here and just get your off the cuff answer.
Okay.
Okay. And so why is leadership important in life?
Well, you're either leading or you're following. I mean, it's I've never really thought of it this way, but you're following somebody, you're following a path. And a lot of people will say, hey, you're forging your own way. And I don't know that that's always correct. I think those paths have been taken. Sometimes they're harder than what others have gone through. But leadership's important for a follower to be able to trust that leader and to be able to have clarity of where they're leading you to. Are they leading you to a path of abundance and success and growth, or are they leading you into a path that is stagnant and detrimental to your physical and mental health? I mean, leadership's extraordinarily important.
I think the intent of your 10 rules impacts the answer in this question here, but why is integrity important in leadership?
Well, I think integrity is the foundation of trust.
Mm-hmm.
Ask everybody what their definition of integrity is, and it goes all over the place, but really comes down to, do you trust that person to do what they say and say what they do? I mean, that's really what it boils down to. So if you can't trust where you're going, there's no integrity in the organization. There gets to be these little, I don't know if you want to call them fiefdoms or little pods and our cliques, and it's just unhealthy when there's not clarity and boundaries on how you treat each other and how you do business.
Causes of leadership failure. What are the top 3?
Ooh, great question, Steve. I'm going to grab a drink of water while I'm contemplating that one. Top 3. Arrogance. Number 1, and arrogance for me, I'm going to speak for me, was being a know-it-all and thinking I knew it all and that I didn't need others' advice. And it became my way or the highway in many instances. So that'd be right up there. Not applying your rules equally. And for me, that meant when I had people that have been in my relationships for a really long time, I would give them a pass on some of the ways that we treated people, for example, and that really created doubt. Looking back, it created doubt in my leadership and doubt in the trust because, again, it didn't have integrity. So one of the greatest things you can do that I would not be sitting here without my friends that came in and at moments in time within the business sacrificed themselves in an amazing way. But at another point, not having those boundaries or that accountability and feeling, since they had done so much sacrificing, that I gave them grace and gave them opportunities to treat others the way they didn't need to be treated. And it was tough. So hiring friends and family, if you can avoid it, avoid it. That's it. Number 3, golly, Steve, not focusing on your profit. I mean, you got to be profitable. And so when you read the book, you'll find out that my 10 rules are not the same 10 rules that we just talked about.
Excellent. So that's where it leads me on. So this last one, leadership failure examples. You have 10 of them in your book, and you've rearranged them. So what's the order now?
Well, rule number 1 is give trust, earn trust. It's because it's the beginning of any foundation of a relationship. And before you can have any other boundaries or rules, you've got to step into a relationship by either giving trust, well, really always giving trust and then earning that trust. Rule number 2 is the safety rule. Again, because if you don't go home at night, nothing else matters. Rule number 3 is the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated. Rule number 4 is profit first, means you can have fun. And really, if you think about it, profit first is putting people first. Rule number 5 is still the vigorous debate rule. And 6 is the best rule. 7 is Zig rule. 8 is the commitment rule. 9 is the celebrate rule. And 10 is the learning rule.
So now that your book's written, folks are going to read it, and they're going to look to you for some sort of input. What's a proper expectation of how you could help them think through their rules?
Well, it goes back to the first question you asked me, which was why. And words mean things big time. And it's funny how, as I've been blessed with the opportunity to mentor some folks right now, really helping them understand the clarity behind what they say and why they say it. Because many times we'll say something that is really tied to a feeling without really diving into the real meaning and purpose behind that. And if we can't be completely clear about it, right, it creates an opportunity within the organization and even the leadership to not have clarity because we each define something differently.
So give us an example, maybe someone that, obviously you didn't just come up with this, you've been working with folks for a while. Give us an example of success.
In what context?
Well, where you sat down and you've helped someone clarify their why and begin to, and what's been the outcome of that?
So I think one fruit, because success is something that you work at every day. It's kind of like perfection. You have moments that you get really, really good at something, but you're never going to be perfect. It's impossible to be perfect. Success is very much, you can have success for a moment, but a life of success is moments of having wins. And so where I really see companies becoming and transitioning and really that owner, entrepreneur, is when they have clarity, the speed that their organization starts moving, the alignment that comes in. I've got a pair of clients right now. They both are leading the organization, and in about 5 months, they've gotten their why down and they've really gotten clarity in the organization, and everything just starts clicking. It's crazy how fast they're moving and propelling their business forward. And then it's for me, it's satisfying to go, wow, you guys are just growing in a way, and they're having fun. Mm-hmm. And that's what business is hard, but you ought to have more time of the day that you're enjoying it than you're not. if it's drudgery, you might need to think about doing something else.
Yeah, I think that let's assume your organization has people that are committed. They have the best intent and interest in success. And imagine they're all heading to some point on a horizon somewhere. And the biggest challenge for any leader is to take this direction and out of their head and clearly make it where everyone can see it. So all of a sudden the energies start to align and go to the same point. And when I was reading your book, I was seeing that this could be very impactful for a lot of people. But the other thing I took away was most of us define ourselves by our failures, and we beat ourselves up for so long. And here you are going, no, you don't. You can take this and flip that. And I think it's something that most leaders need a little help to talk it through with someone. It's hard to let yourself off the hook sometimes. And I think
Absolutely.
I think this is a very empowering aspect of your book.
Thank you.
So we're listening, or you're watching our conversation with Lloyd Brown. He's an author now. His book is Refined by Failure, Breaking Rules and Getting Burned. It's a Amazon bestseller in 3 categories right out of the gate on the first day. So Lloyd, I always ask this question is like, what's one question that I didn't ask that you wished I would have?
I would say, what has been the impact on your family of breaking rules?
So yeah, let's talk about that. That's a little sensitive.
Well, it is. And when you don't have personal boundaries as a leader and you break your own rules, it doesn't just impact the business. It impacts everybody that's involved in your life. And that, to me, probably, has the greatest impact, because if you can lead well at work, it really makes you a better leader at home. And if you can set those boundaries at work and have clarity there, and you do that at home, it just helps on both sides. And I can say since the day that I was called, and actually really the end of June 29th was really a turning point for me, because my wife looked at me and she told me, I'm done. I'm not doing this craziness anymore. And which led me to hire a coach for my mind, a guy named Dave Hollis. I read his book, and he talked about, we'll do a lot of things for our physical health, but we don't focus on the strongest part of our body, which is our mind. And that's really, those 2 things are the ones that I had wished you'd ask me. So you did now.
Yeah, your book starts off with a big gut punch on that topic. And it's like, I think a lot of us all struggle with that same experience in some way, where we've neglected in this fight to be successful, and this justification of all this is worth it, or I got to go focus on this. And yet we neglect the people we love the most.
Yep, absolutely.
So Lloyd, how can people reach out to you, connect with you, learn more about you, get your book? Tell us all of that.
Well, book's available at my website, and that's also how you can reach out to me, which is refinedbyfailure.com. It's available on Amazon and on iBooks. And I think there'll be some other outlets that'll be picking it up here pretty quick. So, but we have the link on my website, and that's really one of the easiest ways to go. It'll take you right to the page on Amazon to be able to buy either the Kindle version or the printed copy of the book.
Most business owners You write books on how to do it right. Here's what you do. But Lloyd Brown, no, he's going to do it differently, but he's going to touch you deep. Refined by failure, breaking rules and getting burned. Stephen M.R. Covey's even endorsed you. So congratulations, Lloyd.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. Thank you. And again, thank you for being one of my coaches and encouragers. And the book wouldn't have happened without that.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. I'm proud. This is good stuff. Lloyd, you've been a great guest on the ROI Online Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Steve. I really appreciate it.
And that's a wrap.